Hi there, this is Phil with PhilFX, and I've got another tutorial. Today we're going to talk about the extrude command in Maya. As I discussed in class, the extrude command is one of the most common commands that I use in modeling, along with working with edge loops and manipulating vertices. So let's go ahead and get started and working on the extrude command. So let's get a shape here that we can work with. So I'll have a sphere here, and let's bring this up. And when you extrude, what you want to do is first you want to select either faces, vertices, or edges. And I can extrude either one of those. I'll show an example of each. For starters, let's go ahead and let's extrude some faces. So I'll go from object mode into component mode, and let's select faces. And let's go in one of the common things that people want to do, and this also is an area that sometimes leads to problems with people new to Maya, is they'll use the marquee to select. So let's go in and we'll select some polygon faces here that we want to extrude, and we think that we're safe, but lo and behold, we've actually selected a number of faces that's behind. The reason for this is with the marquee selection, you not only select what's in front, but you select what is directly behind the object, and you select all of those faces. Now you can prevent this from happening if you want to select using a marquee. If we double click on the selection tool and you go over here and you click camera based selection only. Now what that'll do is only the faces that the camera sees will be selected. So with that enabled, let's go back in here and let's do that again. So we'll go in and we'll select these particular faces. And if I flip around now to the back side, excuse me, you can see that only the front faces were selected and not the back ones. So now we have a selection for the faces that we would like to extrude. And so let's go up and we can use the extrude command. You can find that in a number of places. I use this so often that in the polygon shelf over here, this icon right here is the extrude command, and so I tend to just go ahead and use that because I use it so often. You can get it up here under the edit mesh menu, and under vertex you'll find that you can extrude vertices like I mentioned, you can extrude edges, and you can extrude faces. So I'm just going to go ahead and we'll hit the command here to extrude these faces, and you'll see a manipulator come up. And so this manipulator allows me to then extrude the faces that I've selected. And initially the default is my extrusion is going to be normal to the collection of the faces that I selected. So if I drag on this blue arrow and pull, you can see the faces that I've selected are being essentially pulled right out of that sphere. They literally are being extruded, and so they're pulled right out of the face. And the direction, like I said, is normal to that surface, and you can see that they're being pulled out straight out to the surface. And usually that's what you want to do. Once those faces are pulled out, there's a number of things that I can do with this. I can go in, and if I wanted to, I can use I can click on one of the cubes and say I want to now scale, and so I can scale the endpoints of that. See that? So I can go in and I can scale that, and that scales those back. I can also change the face. I can go in here and I can put in rectangular. This is a little bit awkward with this way because it works better if you've only selected one. I've selected multiple faces, so I don't get quite the effect that I want. But you can go in and you can manipulate the angle of how those faces are. You can see, because I've selected multiple ones, that it's working on doing the multiple faces. And basically, so that's how you do an extrude, and it comes out. I'm going to show you what these tools do here real quick. So let's go in and we'll grab some more faces, and we'll repeat the command. The other way to use this tool, and actually now that I've gotten used to using it, I use this more. I'll go in here and I can just left mouse click on thickness, and that pulls these out. I can click on offset, and that scales that face down. and then I can click on divisions, and that adds an evenly number of divisions into my extrusions. That's very powerful, because a lot of times you'll do an extrusion, and then as you pull the object out, you decide, you know, I really want a few more faces on there, and I want to add a little more resolution. So you can increase or decrease the number of divisions using the tool that you have right here. The last thing I want to talk about is this little blue dot that you see come up. And what that does is that changes the coordinate system that we extrude from being local coordinates to world coordinates. So let's go over here again, and I'll marquee select some faces. And we'll do the extrude command. And if I click on this, you can see my manipulator change. My manipulator is now aligned with world coordinates. If I click on this, it goes back to local coordinates. That will do an extrusion that is normal to the face. This will do an extrusion that was along world coordinates. So if I go in and I grab my red axis and pull out, you can see that that extrusion, in fact, is parallel to my grid plane. So it's doing extrusion in a direction that is coincident with world coordinates. One of the other things I want to talk about in terms of doing extrusions is very often, and maybe the best thing to do is not use a sphere, but let's use a cube. I think that'll show this a little bit better. And take my sphere, and we'll move this out of the way. Take the cube that I created and give that a 2. Let's orient that around the center. All right. And while the extrude command is very powerful, I believe the extrude command is also responsible for a very large part of some bad geometries that early Maya users end up creating for themselves inadvertently. And so let's go in and let's select this face, and I have these faces selected, and I want to do an extrude on them. So let's go in and I'll say, okay, I want to do the extrude command. This comes up, and I look at this and I think, yeah, okay, that's, oh, wait a minute, I changed my mind. I really don't want to do an extrude. So they'll click off. Now if I go into my outliner and I select this cube, you can see a poly extrude face command actually was executed. All right, we didn't move anything, but in the history we did a poly extrude face. I know that because if I go into what's called vertex face mode, and this is the reason for this mode, I can go in here and you can see we have additional edges that have been created. You don't see these lines on the other edges, but you do see them right here on this face. I went in and, like I said, I selected that extrude command, and then I just deselected the command off, but it was actually executed. What it did is it created a face of 0 width, but it put in extra edges. These will cause problems down the road with your geometry. There's a number of ways that you can go about getting rid of these. I'm going to do a tutorial later on editing and correcting bad geometry in polygon modeling, but that's not a subject for this tutorial. But I wanted to demonstrate that this is a very common thing. I've done this myself a lot, and I catch myself. Every time that I end up using the extrude command, I almost immediately follow with this show vertex face, so I can see, you know, did I inadvertently create some bad geometry that I don't want. Now, if you haven't done anything else, a quick way to get around this is simply undo. So notice we have create the polygon cube, and we have a poly extrude face. So if I do an undo, let's go through the course here, go back to the poly cube. I have successfully did an undo on that extrude. Go to vertex face. I now have a good cube. I don't have those extra edges that you see inserted in there. So I have successfully gotten myself out of the pickle I was in by creating that bad geometry. A very common technique that I do often when I do extrudes is I use the G command, because very often when I'm extruding I want to do multiple extrusions in a row. And done correctly, this can work very well for you. So let's select these faces again and go up, and we'll hit extrude, and I'll pull this face out, and now I decide, okay, I want to do another extrude. If you hit the G on your keyboard, either Mac or PC, that generates a new extrude. Okay, hit G again, I have a new extrude. Hit G again, I have another extrude. Very often what I'll use extrude for is to generate a new face that I can extrude from. I want to change the topology of this face, so let me hit G again, and this time I'm going to scale things in. Notice what I have done here. I've done an extrusion, but I actually have not pulled the face out. This has created new geometry right on this face. Alright, now I can hit the G key again, and I can pull out this new face. So I essentially created this new geometry by taking the existing face, I shrink it in, slide it uniformly on all the faces, and then I pull back out of it again. Do the same kind of thing here. I can go in, hit the G command again. I click on the cube, that puts me in scaling mode. I go down here so I can scale in 2 dimensions. And then I can take and hit G again, and I can pull this out. I can also scale, and I can, if I scale up, notice it goes up and it will take the outline out. I can hit G again. Now I've created a new edge. See what I've done here? Okay, so we've created a new edge. If I hit G again, now I pull this face forward. So look at what I've done here. Okay, so I've created the opposite of pulling things in. I actually grew edges out and created faces here. So all this is done simply by using that extrude command. And so we hit return, drop it, I'm done. Let's do a vertex face. Let's see if we've created any bad geometry here. And I can look over all of my extrusions. I don't see any extra vertices or any extra segments, so my geometry on my extrusion is all good. And we've successfully created this different kind of shape here, and that's all done with using extrusions. Another very powerful part of using the extrude tool is I can extrude along a curve. And the way you do that, you obviously need a curve. So let's go in. Well, I know we haven't talked about curves yet in class, but curves basically are just a 2-dimensional line. So I can go in here, and let me just generate a real quick CV curve. Hit return. So I have this curve that I've created in space, and let me move this curve. So I'm going to put it so it's close to a face. And let me select the curve again. I'm going to pull that a little bit that way and pull that a little bit that way. Now what I can do is I can go into the object, I can select a face, select this face, shift, hold on the shift key, and select the curve. So now I have a face selected and I have a curve selected. Alright, and I can go up and I just go to polygons, and I hit the extrude command, and boom, it extrudes along that curve. Now initially it only puts in 1 division. So you've got a very strange shape here. It's just bending itself around and it's only connecting at the two endpoints. If I go in here and I start to add divisions, however, you can see that I have successfully extruded that face along that curve. This obviously is also very powerful. So you can trace things, you can draw curves in space. You take that curve, you put it up to a face, and then you can extrude along that, and it's a very rapid way, as you can see, of building geometry in space. We have a couple of features here. If we go into the channel box, I can go in here and I can click on twist, and if I middle mouse click out here, you can see I can add a twist to that extrusion. I can click on taper, and I can change a taper so I can make that go to a point. Alright, divisions, I can change the number of divisions. It maxes out at 25, but I can change the divisions on there. So you can do some very powerful things. In addition, we haven't talked about this, but in NURBS, when you extrude NURBS along a curve, as long as the history has not been deleted, you can actually change the curve and the extrusion will follow that curve. Well, the same goes here. So I can go in and let me go in object mode. It's a little tough to see my curve because it's hidden, so for the moment I'll hit Control H and I'm going to hide that. Select this curve and I'm going to show the control vertices for this curve. So now we can see these control vertexes for this curve. So I can select these, and let's just manipulate this curve in 3D space and have some fun with it. So I can take this curve and I can bend it. Okay, I can take the ends and I can pull these over here. I can take this one, I can push that down. Take this and put a few more manipulations on this curve. So we've got a pretty wild looking curve now. Alright, so I have changed the curve. Let me go back and take this cube object, hold Shift H, and now you can see that extrusion I did follows the manipulation of the curve. And so all those crazy manipulations I put on the curve are followed with the extrusion. And like I said, as long as I don't delete history for the polygon shape, I can continue to do that. Once I do delete history, and let me show how that happens. So I have the polygon object selected. We go up to Edit, Delete by Type, Delete History, and now my curve is still there and my cube is still there, right? So let's go back in and take my cube object, Control H, let's hide that, take my curve, it's selected. Let's go manipulate these control vertices again. Alright, so let me grab that and I'll bend this way back here, take this and drag that down, and take these and move all of them over here. Alright, so I've really distorted that curve from what it used to look like. Go back to the cube, Shift H, bring it back, and no, it hasn't followed it. It hasn't followed it because we disassociated this polygon object with that curve. And so now manipulations on the curve are no longer followed. If you're doing modeling and you model something like with a curve like that, if you think at all that maybe you're going to need that or something you might need to get back, what you might do, what I often do is I'll create an extra backup copy before I delete history. And by having a backup copy of my scene file, if I need to get back to manipulate some geometry with some curves like that, I can do that. And then I'll go in typically and I'll just delete all the history and go forward, because as you'll find out with modeling, if you don't delete history, your files can get quite big, and there's a lot of reasons you do want to do that. So but as a catch-all, if you have a backup copy, then you're okay. So the last thing I want to show with using extrudes is something called keeping faces together, and we haven't talked about that. Let me get rid of some of the objects I have in my scene here because I don't need these. And let's go in here and we'll get a sphere because the sphere shows that really quite well. Let's pull this up. All right. And if I go in and we want to select faces, so let me select some faces here. And we want to do an extrude. So if I click the extrude tool, if I hold down Control Shift on a PC or Command Shift on a Mac, and I use the right mouse button, so I'm holding down Command and Shift because this is a Mac, and I'm clicking on the right mouse button, this pop-up menu comes up and it says here, Toggle Keep Faces Together. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle that. So we toggle that. Now let's do an extrude on these faces and pull them out and watch what happens. Look at what's going on with those faces. They all pull out normal to each of their own faces, okay? And they essentially pull apart, all right? So it's not one uniform extrusion. If I go back in and I select 4 faces again, hit the extrude command, Command Shift, right click, toggle keep faces together. Now pull. Come on. Toggle faces. Okay, now it pulls out together. Okay. And as you can see, here's that extrusion I did. That's actually a command right here where it says keep faces together. I could go in, make this off, and you see that pulls apart. Or I can select this and I can change that. Now the dragging doesn't work. I can change that on or off. On puts it together. So you can see I can toggle that between on and off, and it'll either pull it together or they won't pull together. So I think that pretty much covers most of the things with the extrude command. Like I said, you can extrude, I wanted to show you can extrude vertices and you can extrude edges. So let's show that real quick. Get a box up here. And there's 2. So I can go in here, go in vertex mode. I can select a vertex and I can hit extrude. Now when that extrudes, I don't have anything I can drag, okay? But I can go in here and I can vary length, so I can click on length and middle mouse button and I can change the length of that extrusion. Okay, I can click on width. I'm holding the middle mouse button and I'm dragging, okay? And so I'm changing the width on that. If I hold down Control on width, I'm holding the Control key down on a Mac. You hold the Control key on a Mac or a PC. Look at how the divisions are changing. They're going not in point steps, but hundredths of steps. So you have a little more finer resolution on the control, on the width on that. And I can actually go in and I can change divisions. So I can add divisions. So that's a vertex. The one thing about doing a vertex, though, you do want to keep in mind, if you do a vertex extrude, notice what I've created here. I've got a 5-sided end-gon. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. If you're trying to keep your modeling such that you always want quads, doing a vertex extrusion is going to be somewhat problematic in that it's going to create end-gons for you. The only way you can essentially get around that is you would have to add an edge loop that would go from here, come through here, and come all the way up to this point. So it would divide all of these, so these would end up being quads, and then you would have quads Actually, we need 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So if I had one here, then I'd have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah. So if I split this, I would have a quad over here, and I'd have a quad on that side. So that would fix that. I can extrude edges, so I can go in and I can select an edge, and I can select another edge, and we can hit extrude, and I can build geometry that way. So I can take that edge and I can pull that right out. And so that's an interesting way of creating geometry off of an edge. I can notice I can pull that down. So we extruded that edge out. I pull that down. I can go back in and select faces. I can select those faces, hit the G key, do an extrude, and pull that up. Hit G, pull that up. So I essentially created some joined polygons by extruding faces and pull it up. Now notice here that in so doing, the way I did that, I end up with an open bottom here. If I wanted a closed geometry, I would have to pull that down, all right? Or I'd have to close these faces off. And you can do that with the bridge command, and you can successfully close that up. So we've shown how to extrude faces, how to extrude vertices. We've shown using the Vertex face command that we can check for bad geometry when we do extrusions. We've shown how you can extrude along a curve, and how you can utilize the manipulator so you can scale things, you can pull things, and use some of the quick commands here. So hopefully this will help you out in using the extrude command. This has been Phil with PhilEffects. Thanks again. Catch you later.